Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to be here first to Reverend Sharpton, who I've been with for many, many years. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. He's getting younger, by the way. Every year, I don't know what it is. I come here, I'm getting older, and he's getting younger. But yeah, he likes that. Yeah. It's the first time he's agreed with me in 10 years. He has always been a voice for justice and a voice for the people. Let's give him a round of applause, Reverend Sharpton. I want to applaud the mothers who went through one of the greatest pains of losing a child, losing a loved one. But rather than taking that energy and making it negative, they took that energy and they made it positive, and they became advocates and crusaders for justice. And they got justice, not just for their families, but for families all across the state. It wouldn't have happened without the mothers. Let's give them a round of applause. To Hazel Dukes and the NAACP and Congressman Charles Rangel and Leticia James and Senator Kevin Parker and all my colleagues who are here, I wish them happy Martin Luther King Day. Mayor de Blasio just spoke. My best wishes to him. And we have to go out and march. And it's not that I'm trying to stall, because it's not that cold. It's really not that cold. Maybe not that cold for you. It's very cold for me. But 3 quick points. Number one, Reverend Dr. King was about one thing, and that fact was action. Action. We tend to think of Dr. King as such a beautiful speaker and a man of words. He was a man of words, but more, he was a man of action. He was a man of product. He was a man who was saying, get things done. One of his great quotes that I love: human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. The tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. Work for action, work for justice, but get it done. We got justice for the mothers. We did something. We appointed the first special prosecutor in this state and a model for the nation. And that's what Dr. King was talking to us about, actually making progress. I often think if Dr. King came and was here today, what would he say? And I think he would say in some areas we've made great progress. African-American president. Bet you that was hard to believe 50 years ago. More elected officials. Changes in the laws. But I think he'd also be quick to point out the areas where we haven't made progress. The area of criminal justice and the area of economic justice would rise to the top. Criminal justice, we are in the same unhealthy, unproductive cycle over and over and over. We don't understand enough to invest in young people before problems present, but then we waste so much money once we have a problem and we send people to prison or drug rehab or whatever it is. We have to change that cycle. And Dr. King's point was action, make it happen. We proposed an agenda this year in Albany that my colleagues are going to fight for all across this state that takes that philosophy and turns it 180 degrees. We call it the right priorities philosophy that says stop spending $50,000 a prison cell. That it is madness to put 2.2 million Americans behind bars. 2.2 million. Maybe it's getting better. No, it's getting worse. A 500% increase in 30 years. Think about that, a 500% increase. 77,000 people in this state behind bars. That has to stop. And we have to have the intelligence to say, let's invest in the front end of the system. Let's go to those schools that are failing, that happen to be in poor communities all across this state. And let's say we're not going to allow those schools to fail anymore. And let's acknowledge the mistake that we've made decade after decade after decade. In those schools, the problem isn't just education. It's not just about a teacher. You're fighting poverty. You're fighting discrimination. You're fighting issues of nutrition. You're fighting for kids who need help in after school. You need schools that are open in the evening with midnight basketball and recreation. That's what you need in those schools. Give them the right education early on so you're not paying for a prison cell later on. That's what this is about. It's not enough to say to a young person, it's not enough to say to a 16-year-old, stay off the street corner. When you have a society that is better at getting them a jail cell than a job interview, where is the opportunity for that person? Where is the job for that person? We started a program 2 years ago that's working phenomenally well, where we go to a private sector employer and we subsidize the salary, and the young person also gets training, apprenticeship in that job. It costs us money, but you know what? It costs us 1/10 of what a prison cell would cost us. And that's the opportunity we're talking about. We want to invest $50 million this year to give hope and opportunity for our young people, now 40% unemployed. We put forth an agenda that says don't be so quick to lock people up. Alternatives to incarceration. Give them a second chance. Give them drug rehab. Give them training, but keep them out of a prison. And for those who happen to go to prison, change the experience in prison. Just to lock a person in a cell and let them out 10 years later and think they're going to be the better for it is insanity. Let's at least use that time and that money to teach and give skills and job readiness so when they come out, they can re-enter society and do something. That is our agenda on criminal justice. And it will take this nation's agenda and flip it on its head. And then the second issue, as you've been hearing about all day, is economic justice. Reverend Dr. King would say we have gone backwards. Highest income inequality in the nation is today, not in the 60s. And work does not pay a decent wage so you can live and support your family in any kind of decency. And that's the word decency. Remember this, FDR passed the minimum wage law. He was former governor of New York, became president. What the minimum wage law said was you should be able to earn a decent living. $18,000 a year in New York City, you cannot earn a decent living. You can't pay for food and apartment and clothing for $18,000. A lot of these companies pay a minimum wage to the worker, but when you pay a minimum wage to the worker, you're still below poverty in this state. So then the taxpayers give food stamps, welfare, average cost $6,800 per person. So you have the corporation paying $18,000, the taxpayer paying $6,800. You want to talk about corporate welfare and a subsidy to the largest corporations in this country on the back of the taxpayer, that's it. And you want to talk about a lack of fairness. If you went to the 70s, late 60s, and you took the minimum wage and you just indexed it for inflation, that's all. Just index it for inflation. You know where you wind up today? Our proposal, $15. That's where you wind up. That means for 40 years, poor families have been going backwards and working families have been going backwards. And it's not just that you feel like you're going backwards. You're not going crazy. You are going backwards. That's what this economic system has done. And that's why we proposed $15 statewide, the highest minimum wage in the nation, and I am proud to fight for it. Let New York lead the way and say, you want economic justice? Pay people what they deserve and pay people with respect. And I will end where we started. Dr. King always said, it's not about words. It's not about saying the right thing. It's about doing the right thing. It's about getting it done, making a difference in people's lives. That's what we're going to do in Albany. That's what we're marching for on that street today. Not to make a point, not to advocate, but to tell our elected officials, you passed $15 and you passed it this year, or we're going to remember you didn't. Happy Martin Luther King Day. There is no better honor for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King than economic justice in this state. Amen.